and welcome to another week of Adventures in Messaging. I'm Emma Stratton, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dan Palay, Head of Product Marketing at SignEasy. Hello, Dan. Welcome. It is so good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. I'm really excited to talk about messaging with you. Tell me, what is the secret to great messaging in your eyes? Because I know a lot of product marketers have different opinions on what is what you have to make it great. So tell me, what do we need to do to create great messaging?
So there are two things that you absolutely positively have to start with for great messaging. The first is great personas, or I prefer the term stakeholder profiles. We can go into that on another episode, but that's the phrase I use, because without really knowing the who you're selling to and who you're trying to convince, you can't message to them. And you need to make sure that you're not going backwards when you build those by starting with, here's the product I'm selling and here's how it relates to what I think, what this person does. You have got to start with, what is this person thinking about, whether it has anything to do with my product or not. And then how do I get my product into those thoughts. If you remember the movie Inception, it's what I call the Inception moment, where you're able to infiltrate their thoughts in order to demonstrate the relevance of what you're selling. And the goal really is to have a more important conversation with your customer than the one your competitor is having. Because if you can have a conversation with them that is about a subject that they care more about, that they know they're thinking about, that keeps them awake at night, that's going to hold their attention better, regardless of the specific features of the product that itself. The last thing I would say, the mistake that is often made with personas and the messaging around them is they're built to the mean or the median. Wrong. Build them to the mode. It's all about where are the points of overlap with everybody that shares certain characteristics, so that you're not coming up with this hypothetical amalgamation of people that simultaneously speaks to everybody and nobody. It's much better to have a couple of key points of overlap and to then be able to talk to those.
Yeah, I love that. I really love what you bring forward about a secret to great messaging, because it's one of my favorite, one of my core beliefs as well. And I think there's a famous quote by Robert Collier, who was a famous copywriter, like in the early 1900s, Depression era or something. And it was join the conversation that's happening in your prospect's mind already, which you talk about. So it's like, your buyer, they're thinking about things that they care about. And if you can connect the dots between their own natural thoughts and your product and make it relevant, that is the key to messaging that resonates. And yet so many people just start with the features, right? How do I connect this feature, like what I love about it? Hey, does this, you like this benefit? Because I think it sounds good.
Yeah, the personas end up being written subconsciously. I think the personas end up being written to fit the narrative you have about your product, as opposed to fitting the narrative about the product to what someone is thinking about.
Yeah, that's an insidious thing. Like, that's subtle. And I think it happens a lot, like kind of fudging. Yeah, fudging personas, or seeing them through a biased lens, through this narrative that you already have in your head. I mean, that's dangerous, really. I wonder if people are, if people who are doing it, if they're aware that that's happening, or if it's just sort of something that just happens as, like, you're a marketer, you know everything about your product, you kind of can't help but do that.
Yeah, and a lot of it, again, topic for another day, but a lot of it comes down to how the personas are built and what questions are asked of people and in what setting.
Yeah.
That's the context really matters.
Yeah. So it sounds like you like to really go deep with your customers and get into their minds and infiltrate with your messaging. Do you have any other kind of, interesting, maybe a tad controversial beliefs around messaging and how you really get into people's heads?
Always. My look, my core belief about messaging is that its job is to trigger, people's basest buying needs, uh, ambition and self-preservation, because that is what each of us are thinking about day in and day out. I don't care what you come up with about the benefits of a product for a customer. When I say customer, I mean a company. Nobody that's part of the buying process is going to pull the trigger on something that goes against their own self-interest. It just won't happen. So that's not to say you can that every product has to, the specific interests of every stakeholder, but you better understand what those interests are and relate it to that. And it's, it's not about uh, it's not always about the feel good messaging you see, or about the messaging that you see, like about, the great benefits of something. What does this do for me right here, right now, uh, on a stakeholder by stakeholder basis? Because what you're selling is not a product. We talked about getting into people's thoughts. You are selling altered thoughts.
Mm.
You need the thoughts that they were having the moment before you showed up to change so that they include your product. So, it's a matter of behavior change and switching costs. We didn't have, if those weren't an issue, I, I probably wouldn't have a job, nor would most other product marketers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know we're all self-interested. We all, are just really wrapped up in our own needs and desires. And, you have to consider that for sure. So yeah, I think that is just a really good thing to think about, right? How can we tap into those, that self-interest? And you're totally right. Messaging's job is to change behavior, change from the status quo. These things that seem
Mhm.
small, which are actually massive. Like, even myself, I feel how entrenched I am in my own status quo in all kinds of areas of my life. I'm like, wow, I really need a better system than this, but it's too hard. I'm just going to keep going with this janky thing I got going on, you know?
Yeah, as I like to tell people, I've got a total of 4 apps downloaded to my phone. I take all my notes with a pen and paper, and I will never own a wristwatch with a battery, let alone a touch screen. So, I'm like, when it comes to tech marketing, for someone in tech marketing, I'm sort of like the tailor whose pants never fit.
But those are the people you want to work with. I used to get my hair cut back in the day at this trendy place, and I would go to the guy who just had like shaggy, it looked like he cut his hair with a blindfold on. And I was like, he's my guy, because he must be good, right? He must be good.
Yeah.
So, Dan, something I think that's really interesting about you is that you've had a really interesting path to becoming a product marketer. You haven't just been doing product marketing for decades. Tell us a bit about your journey into becoming a product marketer and how you kind of ended up there. Because I think it's really interesting for anyone out there who's thinking about maybe moving into product marketing.
Sure. So coming out of business school, I actually went into venture capital, and I thought it was be a great opportunity to see lots of different companies, different industries, get some exposure to that. Where I found myself, you know, once had been doing that for a bit, is VCs. We see a lot of awful pitches. There's no getting around it. Uh, but what most of us will just sort of stop, check out at a certain point. What I found myself doing was rewriting them in my head. And, I couldn't help myself but to think, oh, that was a lousy way to pitch that, whereas right over here, you completely missed what it is that was great about this, or you've ignored this blind spot here that, I could see from a mile away, and you didn't do anything to, position around that. Uh, and then, as I did that more, I thought, oh, I think some of this is was pretty interesting. Maybe I could actually charge for it. And I started doing some consulting on the side, people that were needing to rewrite their pitches, mostly their customer facing pitches, had no idea, really how to describe it or what to call what I was doing. So as I like to say, I was my own worst client. Uh, and but all of a sudden one day I saw a job description for product marketing. And this, I was already in my mid 30s by that point. I'm 37 now. But I saw that and I thought, oh, this is this is pretty strong overlap with what I'm doing. And people seem to know at least sort of what this is. That led me to, for several years having my own consulting practice in product marketing, where messaging, positioning, and persona development were my focuses, and helping people to move away from describing things on a feature basis, move away from the typical way in which personas are created, how pain points are assessed, how problem solving is considered. And then last year I went to SignEasy because I the thing about consulting is I was doing a lot of interesting work. I never felt like I was getting to build anything that I was interested in building long term. That was something that I felt I was really missing, and that's what made me look for to go in-house somewhere. And I found a really great, well-run company with a product that is in you know it's in an area that it doesn't excite a lot of people, the idea of signing documents. That's why it excites me a lot, is how to get people excited
Yes.
about something that they consider a necessary evil, have been doing for the same way forever, and never really thought about doing a different way. Those are the sort of problems that excite me. So that's what brought me to where I am now. That product marketing journey was a unique one. And look, people, I think that a lot of people ask. I did a Sharebird AMA last week, where one of the questions was about getting into product marketing. Uh, there is no right way to do it. It's a relatively new, I wouldn't say it's relatively new, but it's relatively new to spread as far as it has. And, you know, there really isn't such thing as a good entry level product marketing role. You don't
Mm.
see a whole lot of those. So you've got to do, pretty much you're forced to do, something else first. It's pretty hard to not. So my advice to people that are thinking about that is, uh, first ask yourself one question. If I'm in the kitchen, would I rather be cooking or baking? Because it, well, no, it is one of the most telling questions about what kind of product marketer someone will be and what experience someone should be building first. Are you someone who sees the process as a means to an end, or is process your North Star?
Right.
If process is a means to an end, you're a cook. That's one, part of product marketing. If process is your North Star, there's a lot of work out there for you in product marketing. But which way do you think, and therefore what other areas can you build some expertise in order to then translate that into product marketing?
Oh, that's such good advice. I thank you so much for sharing that. I love that idea of asking yourself, like, what would you rather do? I know early in my career, when I was choosing between writing and graphic design, like right out of college, I went for an interview at a magazine, and he's like, your resume is confusing. I don't know what you are. Do you like to write or design? He's like, if I gave you this job at our magazine, would you write or would you design? And I was like, write. And then I'm like, I guess I'll go now. I didn't do well in this interview because it's for a design job. And from that point on, I committed. So I think that's really great advice, to just really ask yourself, what lights you up, and just going out there and building more skills in that area to get into product marketing. So really, really good. I think your story is super awesome, Dan, and thank you for sharing all your insights and great stories with me today. And thank you, everyone who was watching. Definitely come next week and see our next episode of Adventure. Thank you.